I'm walking down the street.
I do want to say to Doni and many of you in this room that over a very long career in this city, all of you have helped me and my colleagues tell the truth and to try to tell.
I may not look like you and you me, but
Take my hat off.
I'm from South Carolina, so I just...
What does this event mean to you, Miss Peggy Morris?
Oh, my heart,
Happy 20th anniversary.
my heart is about loving up on my sisters. Do you know what it feels like to have your sisters in the room? Don.
And dare to be different and unique. I'm gonna be the best me I can be by letting His glory shine through. I am beautiful, I am blessed, but not just what you see in the flesh. I'm free from people, free from myself. There's a
The doctor lived next door to the janitor to the reverend and the lawyer. We were together. Now we get so high and mighty that you create stress for your society because you don't like poor black folks either. That's a health problem. Get yourself together so I can stop being taking care of geriatric people and get back to pediatrics. I thank you, Doni, for all you've done. Let's keep doing it for all and more.
letting His glory shine through. Dare to be you, dare to be me, dare to be different and unique. I'm gonna be the best me I can be by letting His glory shine through. And I dare you, I dare you, I dare you to be you.
First name's Doni, last name's Glover, in it to win it for the long haul, baby. Today joining us, we have some guests from gorgeous Prince George's County. But before we get to them, we want to let you know that we have a Black Wall Street Towson this Thursday up at Moe's Seafood. So come on by and get some great food and meet some great people. All right, without further ado, we have with us Joe Gaskins. Richard, are you going to cut your camera on?
But I'm here. Yeah, I'm here. I can't cut on my camera though.
Why can't you cut your camera on, Richard? This is a television show.
All right, let me see if I can adjust myself. I'll go on mute for a second. Good morning, Mr. Gaskins.
How are you, sir? You making that okay?
I'm doing so good that I was writing a bunch, but now Doni wants me to talk.
Yeah, treat us like you treat CNN when you go on CNN. Joe, how have you been?
I've been doing great, Doni. You know, never reason to complain, brother.
You know,
Yes.
Prince George's County has been all up in the news. What in the world is happening?
Disgusting. That's what it is, Doni. It's disgusting. Never in my life have I seen an attack on a pregnant female council member and also on staff members who've been fired for political reasons. I mean, it's a total mess in Prince George County at this point. It's ridiculous.
Richard, what is he talking about?
I have questions regarding the latter, regarding the former, which is what I was writing about. A few days ago, there was a vote on virtual attendance, which was present for not just many elected officials, but just many Americans, generally speaking, during the pandemic. This vote was a tied vote, and it ended up getting voted down basically along the traditional block lines that have been formed on the current council. And I think there's fairly mass outrage. There's a lot of people who think this is an attack on a pregnant woman. This is an attack on the power block that is essentially just doing what the power block prior to them did, but with different priorities. And there's I'm not sure if it's a protest or just a lot of people planning to testify tomorrow morning regarding a lot of these matters.
Is that when the hearing is?
The hearing for the virtual vote already happened.
No, tomorrow.
Tomorrow there's going to be 50 to 100 mothers and allies going to the county council, according to an email I got from Miss Millie Hall, an organizer in Bowie. I'm not sure what is happening on Tuesday morning. That is still like whether there's another vote, whether people are going to testify, but there's going to be people assembled at the county council building tomorrow morning.
Now help me out, Richard. I'm trying to understand the who, what, when, where, why. There's a Prince George's County councilwoman,
Yes.
a Nigerian American woman.
Yeah, Councilwoman Crystal Oriata, representing the 7th District. She's pregnant.
She's pregnant.
She's expecting to have a child this fall. She has already missed time on the council because of health complications. They voted down to virtual attendance. Many people viewing it as an attack directly on her. Not saying my opinion because I'm an objective journalist. And people are gathering tomorrow to show their discontent with voting down that virtual attendance. Mr. Gaskins, do you have anything you want to add regarding the situation?
Well, hold up, Richard. Not just done with you. I read on the Channel 4 story that 2 people on the council, 2 black people, went after her or have been openly against her.
Yes,
that would be Calvin Hawkins, and then also Wanika Fisher. Is that true?
Councilmember Hawkins said directly, blatantly, this is to break up the Council of 6. You all have been a Council of 6 since December, he said during the debate. And Councilmember Fisher discussed a woman in the legislature who gave birth and was on crutches the whole time and said, in essence, that she was extended no grace. So why should we be extending grace? It was something to that effect.
Okay, now the second question is, Wanika Fisher is also Nigerian American.
I think that she's also Indian. Like she's mixed with multiple things. So I'm not going to try and say for sure.
She told me she was Nigerian.
Okay.
And I'm just a little now. There's also, I want to say, Wile Bigay.
Wait, Walla Bligay.
Is she also Nigerian? And I'm just pointing to this growing number of Nigerian American elected officials in Prince George's County. Am I right?
I don't think Walla's Nigerian, but she is West African.
Okay. Because that's something we don't see here in Baltimore, Africans being involved directly in the legislation. I think that's a beautiful thing. I mean, if you have that going on, Joe, in Prince George's County, clearly we've seen the Ukrainians get a hell of a lot of resources from America. We see the Latino population burgeoning. But I remember when the Haitians attempted to cross the border, they were met with men on horseback. So I'm just a little sensitive to the immigration policy here in America when it comes to black people. Joe?
Yeah, Donnie, you said it's kind of unusual. It's not in Baltimore so much, but you got to remember that the Nigerian or the African relationships and the bonding of the Black American started back in the 60s and the 70s, and it came out of Howard University during the time when there was a strong soccer team. Howard won 2 championships there, and most of those players were Nigerian individuals. That bond started, and it just became a part of Prince George County naturally, with those individuals from each community moving further into the political arena. But I would say the new movement that we see here is a result of my Prince George's and the work that Richard and others have done from a younger perspective. And they've molded and they've bonded together and put together these partnerships, which naturally should exist and should become a part of a larger picture of economic empowerment. Other individuals move into the U.S. and they create bonds and they create financial components that are able to fund and do things. Why not Prince George County? Why not the state of Maryland? And so this attempt at attacking a pregnant woman is totally uncalled for. There is going to be a protest, as Richard stated. It's going to be at the county. It's going to be 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, Tuesday morning. So everybody in the listening audience, come out to attend, tell others to attend. And further, Donnie, what it is a tack on the power structure in Prince George County. And the reason why you saw Calvin so adamantly coming out, because Calvin represents that power structure, that old power structure that did the same.
Okay, can you hold up for a second? I thought Calvin came from humble beginnings.
There's this distorted picture of who people really are and who controls those particular people.
Richard, do you agree with that?
I think you can follow the campaign finance contributions. It is a fact to say that Councilmember Hawkins and Councilmember Franklin very much represent the individuals that have donated to them, many of them in the development industry. I'll leave it at that.
Well, this is troubling because I remember hearing the other side of the story. Oh, let me in, let me be a part of this. I can do the job. And I'm kind of wondering, Richard, does absolute power corrupt absolutely?
I'm not going to say that as much as what I think is important in this situation to recognize is that a year ago, one could argue that the council operated on basically the exact same principles. It just had a different set of priorities. Again, same procedures, just a different set of priorities. And now that there's a new bloc that is in power, that is able to use the same procedures, the same committee system, etc., to their benefit for their priorities, the individuals who were doing the same thing about a year ago, a year and a half ago, are now criticizing the process. That is what I see as the primary hypocrisy of the situation.
You know, a year and a half ago, I was hearing great things about Council Chair Hawkins. I was hearing, you know, potentially the next county executive, Joe. But now I'm hearing Aisha Brave Boy.
Yes. Probably more so an individual who's not controlled by that old power structure, economic power structure. That old economic power structure is probably facing the onslaught of the most diligent and powerful group of individuals who've ever been on the council, who are bucking the system. They are standing behind their beliefs. They're not being bought. They're identifying individuals who have been bought by the system. And so those individuals, and I'll always clearly state this, it's not the black face that you see. It is the power of the dollar that is reaching out and telling our elected officials, whether they be a Calvin Hawkins or whether it be a Wanika Fisher, they're telling them, you've got to stop this elected bloc because it's hurting us economically.
No, what does he mean, Richard? Is he talking about contracts? Is he talking about that these developers are expecting contracts with, say, hypothetically, no MBE participation? Richard, you've been covering this county for the Washington Informer. You've been covering elections. At the end of the day, the question is, do the politics translate into economics? And I'm thinking in gorgeous Prince George's County, one of the, if not the wealthiest black jurisdiction in the country, that when it comes to contracts, these contracts are going to black people. But I'm starting to get the impression that these contracts are not going to black people.
Well, to my understanding, the Alsobrooks administration touted a record high in MBE participation and in just in general black business contracts in Prince George's. But the council, in my opinion, has found a way to improve that even more. They've done a lot of these different seminars. They've done different procurement strategies where now I think if you have a...
But I got to tell you, Richard, that I understand that County Executive also Brooks does not show up to these MBE events, including the one last Monday, last week, where Governor Moore, the Moore administration, was there at Bowie State University on this very topic. So I'm just trying to get a sense of whether MBE is a priority in Prince George's County or not.
Well, a priority for who? I'm saying that
A
for
priority for the county executive who is looking to run and represent the state of Maryland as the first Black and the first Black woman U.S. senator.
I said she did record high, not that the county
That's a relative term.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's a horrible term to use because it is just representative of the prior administrations. However, the council is doing more, in my opinion, to expand MBE access and just general business access to the Black community, to small business owners. I attended multiple different forums where I think now they've changed the procurement strategy. So now if it's under like $5,000, it's a lot easier to do. So this is to say that
$5,000, with all due respect, is not a lot of money.
No, I'm just, it's opening the door more than it already had been by the county executive.
There's a certain standard in Prince George's County, being the wealthiest Black jurisdiction. Joe, $5,000 is, quite frankly, chump change.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think Richard is giving a fair assessment from his position of reporting. But if you are a business person and you're looking at $5,000, it's not worth the time and effort to put together a proposal.
Richard, I couldn't get 30 articles from you for $5,000.
Yes, you could.
You got to raise your price, Richard. It should be more than that. But what I'm stating, what we are seeing here is a dynamic that I expected to take place. And I expected to take place not as vicious as it has rolled out. 2 weeks ago, our friend who ran diversity for the county was fired in Prince George County, Deborah Carter, for no reason, just because the county council, the county executive wanted her to leave, and she was under the guise of reorchestrating her administration. Now, if you're leaving your administration to run for a Senate seat, why are you reorganizing your all of these offices? That's not the only office. They brought in a person who didn't have the experience to take over the operation of central services. Now, what does central services do? If you follow the money trail, that's all of the contracts in the county, Doni. All of the contracts in the county, with the exception of a few that the county exec has under its control. Those contracts are now being handled by this person who has no knowledge of prior history. Now, the rationale for moving those individuals out is because you need total control over the process. Deborah had the responsibility to sign off on contracts. It had to, under her position. And from a perspective of MBE, she saw every contract that came out of Prince George County. That was a decision made. Jared McCarthy and the entire crew that works for Angela made that decision because they no longer wanted her to be in a position so they could see these contracts that are being awarded. So if you further dig down, you'll probably find out that individuals are being coerced into supporting a race for U.S. Senate because of individuals who have the ability to see these things and not to accept their role in doing what could be a legal process are identified and fired because they don't want to be a part of that particular process. they're being penalized. Now,
Joe, I need you to tell people who Deborah Carter is.
Deborah Carter is a person who is a high visible person who has been in the political process. She's a former assistant secretary of transportation. She was the chief of until 3 weeks ago. She was in charge of all the diversity programs for Prince George County. Also, politically, on the political side, was the one of the two individuals to be considered for a position during the time of the election under Peter Franchot as a lieutenant governor. So she's a prominent individual in the community. She does not follow any particular command from anybody. She's unbought. And so for that particular reason, you would see an attack to come out against her because she can't be controlled. And she's not going to allow the system to have her in a process that she's got to protect herself legally because she did something that would allow a contract or circumstances to benefit another political person or developer in the county. So she is a likely target, and was the target. Now you can frame that as from a county exec's perspective as restructuring your government, but the question goes, why are you restructuring your government? Are you doing that because you want certain people who will give you political contributions to benefit from this decision that you've made here, and this person is in your way? Are you moving her? We've seen these things too many times, Donnie. We came out of political processes which guided contracts to individuals who should not have got them, but got them because they were able to make contributions. Contributions to people.
Richard has to get out of here. Richard, were you aware of Deborah Carter being fired?
I was not, but I have seen there's been more postings about new hirings within the administration, which implies that there's been people who are leaving. And Mr. Gaskins, you may have seen this. Did you see something that Sherman Hardy posted regarding?
I didn't see Sherman's. What was Sherman's?
Sherman Hardy wrote kind of just like his opinion on the past administrations along with the current one. I don't have the comments on hand, but one of the things that he said about the Alsobrooks administration, and I'm sure it's hyperbole, but he said that there were more vacancies in the Alsobrooks administration than in the Trump administration. Now, for many of these, it's not like there's ever anything posted publicly to say individuals been fired, individuals been hired. There's people who got hired last week who've technically been working for the county for like 4 or 5 months. But it implies to me that, yeah, like you said, there's been mass restructuring, and mass restructuring in the middle of the Senate campaign poses a lot of questions. Another thing, Donnie, I'm going to stay in a call. Just tell the other people I'll join them later, is that there is the potential for there to be a special election to replace Alsobrooks rather than a council appointment. Under the procedures of the county council, if the county executive resigns before, like, I don't know, let's say December the 1st, they're appointed by if they resign after December 1st, is appointed by county council. But if they resign beforehand, it's a special election. The only way that, as Joe has so very well put, the power structure in Prince George's County would get an executive of their liking possibly is through a special election. So it is very likely, in my opinion, if Alsobrooks wins, there is a special election rather than a council appointment for the county executive.
If she wins the Senate race?
Yeah, if she wins the Senate race.
I'm glad you said it, because that's my question to you. How is she polling in this U.S. Senate race? The election is May 14th.
I have not seen any polling as of yet. I'm of the opinion that if Trone had favorable polling, he would have released it. And I don't believe Alsobrooks has the kind of money to just waste on a poll as of yet. But I would expect that if there were a poll
Will
done,
Jawando, you left him out. Will Jawando.
Will Jawando, I think he has money. He has more money than I expected, but I don't believe he has the money for a poll either. If I were to see a poll today, I do think Alsobrooks is in the lead, but I don't think any one candidate has the votes to win the race right now. I'll put it that way.
If the election were today, Richard, who do you think would win?
If the election were today, I believe Alsobrooks would win, but there's a lot of time between now
She
and
would win. She would win the state of Maryland.
If it were today, I think that she would win the state of Maryland. However, I think that Trone is going to spend enormous sums of money, and we have never seen what enormous sums of money spent going negative on a candidate can do to a candidate that's not necessarily known around the state.
Speaking of people with a lot of money, there was an article in The Guardian just a couple of days ago, and it really was eye-opening. It was about this young man who has put a lot of money into the Trump candidacy. His name is Leonard Leo. Are you familiar with him? Well, this young man, not very old, I don't even think he's 55 years old. Leonard Leo is the secretive right winger using billions to reshape America. He's with the Marble Freedom Trust, an advocacy group that has received $1.6 billion in donations. He's responsible for possibly 2 or 3 Supreme Court justices, and one of his major goals was reversing Roe v. Wade. Richard, before you go, are you surprised that Roe v. Wade has been reversed in the United States of America?
I think it's disturbing, but I don't think it's a grand surprise considering just the number, not just the number of, but the age of the Supreme Court justices that Donald Trump added. We are going to be fighting those Supreme Court justices for the next 30, 35 years because they're so young. And I think it's an indicator that in Biden's second term, it is imperative that you replace your old justices immediately with younger justices. In fact, I'd say start the process now, the vetting process to the best of their ability, because there's no guarantee that Democrats get a majority in the Senate or maintain a majority in the Senate, although I do expect them to.
Richard, do you see Biden winning re-election?
Right now, I do. I would say, honestly, I do. I think that it will be a closer race than many would expect, just like it was the first time. But as the race comes along, I think that a lot more people will, especially if it's Biden versus Trump, will just acknowledge like the end of Trump's presidency was just bad in every way, shape, and form. Bad economy, bad pandemic response, bad on everything. And I think that Joe would be able to pull out a victory against Donald Trump if there's a rematch.
Joe, any thoughts on the black man still arrested in Georgia for standing up for Trump? I couldn't believe the story. I read it in the Atlanta Daily World. Are you familiar?
No, give me a little background on that.
Richard, have you seen that story?
Yeah, he got arrested. So did Kanye's old publicist and like 25 other people. I think Rudy Giuliani was in the same probe. It was like maybe the craziest RICO group you'd ever see in your life.
His name is Harrison Floyd.
Oh yeah, of course.
Black Voices for Trump director.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I'm just wondering, Joe, are we seeing more and more black men jumping on the Republican side, on the Trump side? Am I seeing some type of dichotomy in Black America where black men are not necessarily voting and supporting black women politically, like Stacey Abrams in Georgia?
No, I don't see that. I think, in fact, I think that what happens is that black men get labeled as individuals who don't come out the vote, who don't carry the Democratic Party,
I'm hearing, Joe, that a lot of these black men are just being turned off by some super alpha black women politicians.
Well, I wouldn't say that that's not a issue.
I mean, we need
But I would.
strong black women, but can they get so strong that it's actually turning off black men, Richard?
That's not an issue for me as a voter, but I'm not going to say that I'm representative of your average voter at all. So I think that for some people that could be an
John
issue.
Hopkins.
Yeah, I think for some people that could be an issue, but I don't really see what women necessarily need to do on fixing that, rather than we need to get either more men to vote generally speaking, or for more men to vote issues based, which is what I'll recommend that everybody does. Everybody should vote based on their personal issues.
And yeah, Donnie, on top of that is that that's a problem with the system, and the system, of course, has already has a plan that they have, and it's no secret that in order for a certain race to consider to continue controlling their economic and voting status in the country, they must do certain things. And so this natural process is evolving now. I don't think that you have an alignment, and I'm sure you don't have alignment of all white individuals voting for a Republican, Donald Trump specifically, because he's going to be their savior when the electoral process changes in the white races in a minority situation. I think you have a melting pot of individuals who will aggressively try to and work to make sure that this scenario does not take place. But the guy that you're talking about, it's no surprise. It's no surprise that you have a Kanye West there that embrace such people who really should not even be in the political process, but because money is such a large factor in the political process, they use their clout and they support people like Donald Trump and extremists. I want to use that term.
Joe, what about the typical poor white American who is supporting Donald Trump? I'm seeing here in Sandtown, and we've been dubbed as having the worst socioeconomic factors in the state of Maryland. We are seeing our community flooded with poor white addicts who are Trump supporters. Given a choice, it's pretty clear that they would be Trump supporters.
Absolutely, that's right. And while you look, if you
they're
go back,
but they're panhandling in 21217. Look it up. Zone 17. We have the worst socioeconomic factors in the state of Maryland. Yet we have these individuals, large numbers, traveling 2, 3, 4, 5 at a time, panhandling in the brokest zip code in the state,
which is kind of crazy. I mean, how much money are you going to get by doing that? So, but the bottom line is the political process will deem that, okay, you blame your personal issue on what you perceive to be social issues of the community, and so therefore a continuation of the Civil War is
I'm glad
still
you
alive.
said that. I'm glad you said that, because this whole J6 commission, people are getting time.
Yes, absolutely.
17, 18 years, it didn't seem like it was going to happen.
Yeah, well, from the 1800s, that was since Lincoln's assassination, that was a wound that never healed, and it's not a black thing; it's a white thing. With certain white components of the voting bloc and against others, and they are still there, and they're still there strongly. And Donald Trump has been smart enough, and he's also been vigilantly organizing that structure. Black poor whites. Everybody has been his target, but he does it in such a way that they feel comfortable with panhandling, knowing that my savior is Donald Trump. When he becomes president again, everything is going to be okay. Mentally blocked into this fictitious world of believing that he's going to solve their issues when Donald Trump's entire strategy has been to put himself in a position where he is the sole dictator of the U.S. and he
Let me get
controls
to
world
Richard.
economies.
Richard, down in Georgia, are you familiar with Fannie Willis?
Yeah,
Now,
Kanye's
Governor Brian Kemp said he will not support any attempts to have the Fulton County District Attorney removed over her RICO indictment of Donald Trump and 18 others. Donald Trump did not know that they would be busting caps in his hind parts in Fulton County, Georgia. They are not playing with him.
Yeah, and can I say at the same time that that's a positive for us, it is a good thing they're being prosecuted in Fulton County. At the same time, I think that's Jerron Levy, former councilwoman, that's commenting. I assume that's who's talking. Nice to see you again. At the same time, this is the same strategy that Republicans in Georgia are using to remain elected.
No, this is Gwen Levy. I'm sorry, Gwen Levy.
Oh, Gwen, okay, it's not Jerron. Okay, so yeah. in Georgia, you can vote regardless of party. They have open ballot. There are lots of independents and even Democrats now in Georgia that were fine with voting for Kemp specifically because they thought that Kemp was anti-Trump. So we already talked about black men that either ain't voting or flipped their votes in order to support, go against Stacey Abrams. But we definitely need to talk more about the suburbanites, the middle class people that think, oh, Brian Kemp is respectable. He's not Trump. And that is really how Stacey Abrams lost, because there was huge crossover voting. I think that the state of they also
wasn't support for Trump. It was support for Kemp. It was that Kemp was more palatable.
Yeah, it was that Kemp is not Trump. Kemp is fine with going against Trump. Kemp didn't want to flip the electoral votes for Trump. Therefore, Kemp is reelectable. Not only did they reelect Kemp, who is himself a grave danger, but they also reelected Roxburgher, who was the Secretary of State, who's the person that put the laws in place in the first place. So while I do want to applaud them for going after the January 6th commission, we have to point out that this is how Georgia Republicans, who maintain the balance of the electoral college in the country in their balance, have maintained power by making themselves more palatable.
These same people who put up Herschel can't complete a sentence by himself, Walker.
Yes.
I mean, thank God for Deion Sanders to add some credibility back to football. But I mean, do you remember some of the things that Herschel Walker was attempting to say? The man could not articulate a complete sentence with a subject and a verb.
Yes, and
but
again,
they put him up as the candidate to go against Raphael Warnock.
And to the point of making people not seen in the process. If you're in Georgia and you see that that's what people are putting up as their favorite candidate, not in spite of his limitations, but because of his limitations, what does that do to the process when you are literally picking people for the positions because they are inept, because they're a stereotype?
Joe, have you seen this before?
Oh, sure, of course.
Not you, Richard. To the senior, to the elder. Have you seen this type of playing us against each other type thing before?
Not as much as.
I mean, this is diabolical.
This is
for anybody to put up Herschel Walker.
This is
in an academic or in an exercise where you have to use some modicum of common sense. It's unforgivable. I mean, it's an insult to any African American who has ever gone to college.
Absolutely, it is. It's any African American. Period. Come on.
How about that?
Yeah, it is. It's ridiculous. But the even more alarming is that it was a tight race.
Yes. Yes,
that's the deal. That's the
this
deal.
man needs concussion protocol, but he's up there debating with the Morehouse man. Listen, as a
Yes.
Morehouse man, that's just simply blasphemy.
It is. It is. And that should be enough to wake us up as a Black community to see how the system, certain components in the system, can use a Black person against another Black person to achieve its objective. And I said this earlier. I did see this, Donnie, with our judge, not our judge. I don't want to claim him, but against what the Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, and his appointment and his continuation to honor his appointment to certain people who do not look like us. But he's doing what his individuals put him there to do. Herschel Walker is the same continuation of that mentality, with the exception that they've taken from not an appointment to the voter base and were successful in getting these kind of votes out from the community. It's ridiculous. You know, we really have some real difficult work to do, and we got to make sure that the Prince George County does not get caught up into what they think is a election to elect the first Black female. I don't want to say that. The first Black female, you first write the correct person. Know what a person represents in the community. If it's for the good of the community, elect that community. By all means, elect a Black woman, but do not elect a Black woman that's involved in shenanigans that's going to hurt the Black community. Is the issue that I look at, and I says, no, I cannot do that. And you give me, and we can see the results of that. We saw it in that election, the Herschel Walker election, that you would have had a Black person, but unfortunately for him, there was another Black person running against him. If that was Herschel Walker running against a white person in that race, that wouldn't even been a close contest whatsoever, Donnie. No, it would not, Richard. It would have been straight up Herschel Walker is an idiot. Do not support him. So it's those kinds of circumstances that we find ourselves in when we become a majority community and we're controlling economic dollars, that the power structure starts to use us, make us believe that you are the best. But in the same time, they are controlling and taking your resources from you. Ask South Africa in its process over the years, and they can't even control multitudes of dollars. They're fighting for control now over, and I would say Nigeria is a very strong example of a country that's fought back. And with the Nigerian leadership in Prince George County, those individuals are not bought. They have stood up during this particular process, and they have supported issues that have represented Black business people versus making a statement that would allow for them to be utilized by a system.
Let me just jump in here. Richard, I got to ask you about the role of the Black media. We've talked about Africa. We've talked about the Supreme Court. We've talked about Prince George's County. We've talked about Angela Also Brooks potentially becoming the first Black woman U.S. Senator, Stacey Abrams and her role there in Georgia. I have to ask you, being a journalist, writing for the Washington Informer, Be More News, and other news outlets, what's your take on the role of Black media in all of this? So we're proud of you, Richard, because, well, anyway, I could contaminate your response, but
I think the most important role for us is truly examining the circumstances and the records, the accomplishments, specifically for the Senate race, I still, outside of school construction, I still want to hear a reason to support Angela also outside, school construction and the historic nature of the candidacy. Those have so far been the two primary reasons to support County Executive Alsa Brooks presented for Senate. Would you agree, Mr. Gaskins? Just those two reasons? Outside of those two reasons, I have not really heard much in terms of not even what they're proud of, but what they've done, regardless of whether they're proud of it or not. Regarding Congressman Trone has run a very issue-based campaign and has tried to just go out and meet people. And Council Member Jawando is very issue-focused, and he's running I'd say Trone is talking more about his life story and how he came up to be a billionaire. Mr. Jawando, Councilman Jawando, talks about his record on the Montgomery County Council, where, like we talked about earlier, in Prince George's, they vote down virtual attendance. In Montgomery County, they allowed it. That's just one of very, very few basic progressive things that Mr. Jawando has been able to accomplish already. So I think that's the main role that Black media has in the Senate race, talking about the accomplishments, talking about the pride of the individuals who are running, so that we can better give an examination of why we should support them. Look who's with us. We got a council member, Martin Mitchell from the city of Laurel.
You're muted.
Welcome to the show, Martin Mitchell. We
Martin,
can't hear you.
You're unmuted, but we can't hear you. Now you're muted and we can't hear you.
Richard, to say the least, the Black media has a significant role, because you're not going to hear this conversation. And special thank you to Kenneth Clark and Gwen Levy for their comments. But Joe, you're not going to get this conversation anywhere else but Black media. And I really hope that our viewers, our readers, those people who are politically active understand this. You're not going to get it in the Washington Post. You're not going to get it in the Baltimore Banner. We're going to have a frank discussion about our politicians, what we believe, what we don't believe, and you can take it from there. But it's only going to happen with the Black press. And I say that in particular, Richard, because this is actually what I'm writing my capstone on for graduate school. The role of the Black media. Without the Black media, you don't get this conversation. Maryland is 30% Black. We don't have enough Richard Elliott's, Joe.
That's correct.
We don't have enough Black writers. And I want to see more. You mentioned Howard University. Let me tell you something else. No slight to the people running, but David Trone, Angela Alsa Brooks, Will Jawando, we've reached out to all three of those candidates, and we have yet to hear from them to be on this show. We've not heard from one of them. And I want to tell you that the Baltimore media market is not to be forsaken. They better get on their A job.
Yep, Donnie, the buck stops there. And over the years, you've made sure. So look, I can only advise them to make the right moves. It's unheard of not to have your two Black candidates not taking an offer to come on. It's crazy. But hey,
well, look. None of them. And it's like they all take the Baltimore media market. Let me tell you, if you think the DC media market wins Maryland, you're wrong. Martin Mitchell, welcome to the show.
Hey, can you guys hear me today?
No, it sounds real staticky.
Oh no, Richard gave me a thumbs up, and you said
can you hear him, Joe? It sounds like you're
I can hear him. Let him go. He's staticky, but let him go. We can understand.
Okay.
Well, what's happening in PG County, Martin?
Man, there's a heck of a lot happening. You know, the most recently I seen that Intercept article about Angela Alsa Brooks, you know, that basically, you know, touted her record as a state's attorney, not being so progressive necessarily. And so that's probably the most interesting thing. That article came out yesterday. So
Yeah. It's disgusting, Martin. That record that she had was probably, I would think that would be come from a very conservative individual if I didn't see her face on that article. And the fact that she did not support a veto, not support, vetoed $250,000 being proposed by a council member for recidivism, to prevent recidivism in Prince George County. She took that totally out. Now, how do you help individuals not to go back into the same circumstance? How do you feed that? Now, how do you suggest that individuals should be take the worst side when it comes to the being for the death penalty? How do you play that in your mind? And I did that earlier when I was a state's attorney. How do you make that as an excuse? Those are the things that bothered me when I read that article about her and her former position as state's attorney and the position that she was playing. There's certain things that I always say in terms of crime. Crime is unacceptable, but you have to look at the root causes of crime, and then you have to look at preventive measures. But if your preventive measures are to kill individuals or to take individuals who have not had a benefit of learning and not give them the opportunity to learn in the system under structured leadership, you can't change the dynamic of individuals. It's not going to work. And that's what she's proposing. And that was that entire article, Donnie. I don't know whether you had the chance to read it, but you need to read it.
So, Martin, I want you to put a plug in for yourself. Of the people on this panel, you're running for mayor.
Yeah, I'm running for mayor of my hometown, the second biggest city in Prince George's County, Laurel, Maryland. And so 153 years, we've never had a person of color. And we're going to do it in November.
That's when the election is, November?
November 4th is early voting, and November 7th is election day. And, you know, I'm proud to say that we're the only candidate to be endorsed by organized labor. You know, I've never seen organized labor play a part in a municipal race outside, of course, Baltimore City. And so we're endorsed by organized labor. We're endorsed by working families. We're endorsed by immigrant groups, CASA in Action, Life After Release, Progressive Maryland. And so, you know, we have a very people-powered campaign going.
Well, I got to tell you, I'm not always a fan of organized labor. I've seen where they've been on the wrong side of history.
I understand. There's some people who are not always a fan of organized labor, but most people
sometimes they make the wrong decision and support a bum.
Sure.
I know you're not a bum. I'm not saying you. I'm thinking here in Baltimore. I've seen it's like, wow, you support them? This guy? Damn.
It was the powers that be, Donnie. It was, but it was different this time around. Organized labor actually had a partner. You remember, I helped with collective bargaining in our city. You know, so they already had a partner.
With the housing scenario?
No, with the public workers. We became the 15th city in Maryland to grant public workers collective bargaining May 22nd through a charter amendment.
So, Richard, have you been following Martin's race? I mean, you are the political guru. At least, you know, you're replacing Joe and myself as we ride off into the sunset.
Yeah, I've been following the race. Let me be objective. It's a 5-candidate race. 3 of the candidates are black men, and the other 2 are like Indian men, I believe, or South Asian men. The 3 black men are all members of the council. And if I were to, give a prediction right now, I would estimate that Councilman Mitchell's ahead, not only because of support among the youth sector, but also I believe because he'll have a large amount of crossover support from Republicans and independents in the upcoming city election. Municipal elections in Prince George's are rather fascinating. One would theorize they're more conservative because they're open for everybody to vote. But ironically, because anybody can vote and most young people are independents, it opens up the lane considerably more for young and progressive candidates, in my personal opinion.
Richard, what are these youngsters talking about? Break it down for us older folk.
So for Councilman Mitchell in Laurel, one of the predominant issues that he has talked about has been the revitalization of Main Street. Laurel is in the middle of Maryland. There is the opportunity to connect not just the MARC route, but other mass transit and have just a tourist, a destination area that is separate from the Baltimore or DC area, but where people from multiple counties can go there and really invest and have a wonderful experience and then go home and get home in 30 minutes. That was one of the major things that Councilman Mitchell has talked about. Some of the other candidates, I truthfully do not know their platforms because they've mostly just run based on getting out and meeting people rather than talking about issues as much. But Councilman Mitchell has also been very involved in the unionization effort. And so was Councilmember Calder Walt, who I believe is running for re-election as well. It's going to be a very, very contested elections in Laurel and in Greenbelt and in Bowie this November. All three of the largest towns in Prince George's are all going to have very contested elections.
Joe, help me out. What are these young men discussing? Tell me about it. Tell me your perspective.
It's refreshing. Man, it's great to see that, Martin. If you would connect with me so that we can help to support you through.
He got some money for you, Marty.
Yes, and advice.
We need that money, Marty.
The Maryland business clergy do that, but no, I can only. It's refreshing that we do have individuals who will continue to, as you said, take that torch. We need it, and we need them to be strong. We don't need individuals to basically roll over and do whatever the system tells them to do. We need individuals who will listen to the community. And from my side, I've always been on the economic side.
That's what I want to ask you, Joe. Black men have been getting locked up for marijuana since Jesus the Christ. Now it's legal, and it's like we're blocked out of the business aspect of it unless you have about $10 million. Councilman Martin Mitchell sees that disparity and has spoken out on it and has a number of allies, many of whom are not even black men. Yeah.
No, it's ridiculous. And if you read what Angela said on that, it was also disparaging. This industry has been while over doing this state process has basically eliminated every black business person, even the business individuals who were powerful enough to raise the capital still couldn't get in. And after they got in, they have not been able to open up facilities. And we still have counties that now that it's reaching down to the socially impacted individuals, try to get them involved with putting further barriers in their places, telling them where they need to locate their business, being more restrictive at that end. When you didn't do that, when the first individuals were in on the first two rounds, now that it's a social component of it, you're making it even more difficult. It makes no sense. You need powerful leadership with minds who understand economics.
Can I add one piece to the cannabis part?
Please.
So as far as the cannabis system in Maryland, the way we set it up is the reparations dates back, I think, like 20 years when we're looking at zip codes. But as far as social equity, they're only going back 10 years. And so the reason that's problematic is because cannabis legalization happened in 2014 in Maryland. And so looking at it from 2013 to 2023 is not a real estimation of like people who were victimized by cannabis criminalization, because obviously there was only 1 year after that where it wasn't decriminalized. And so I think it's better if we went back to like 2002 arrest records for cannabis, and that would show a more realistic picture of the disparities.
I will respond to that from my position as chairman of the African American Cannabis Association. You're absolutely right. But what you had is a decision, a political decision, to allow for individuals to be appeased. So the driving individuals in this were the existing cannabis business owners. And they were the ones that individuals like C.T. Wilson, who chaired the committee, had to deal with. So they gave it up. They says, okay, let us do this. Let us put a social program. The other individual says, no, we're not going to go all the way back. We're going to do this. We're only going to go to this particular period, 2012, when it started. And that's why you have, again, a program, but another program that's all encompassing of what it should be taken care of. Now, there is a session in Annapolis that's coming up where they're going to add to it, but I doubt that that's going to, I don't really have reasonable expectations that that's going to change. I wish that it could change, but I don't think so. But it's something that over a period of time, as one person stated, is that laws are constantly changed. This round was not supposed to take place. We put pressure on the state to force them to deal with this particular issue, and so it came back. I was told by senators that the train had already left the station and it was not going to happen. Black people were not going to be included in the process.
Well, I just want to put this out there, Joe, that we have a black governor. You've got a black county executive. We got a black mayor. We got black people running for U.S. Senate. All of these political accomplishments mean absolutely nothing if we can't get that money. Speaking of which,
economics.
Martin, we want to wish you a happy belated birthday, but also when is your next fundraiser? Because again, we know you need money in order to run your mayoral campaign in Laurel.
Sure. So tonight I'm doing a business roundtable with Delegate Darrell Barnes, Delegate Mike Rogers, and County Executive Calvin Ball right here in Laurel. It's at the Auto Nation because we're focusing in our campaign economic development. And so we want to bring together the business community. So it's tonight at 6 to 8, Auto Nation showroom. And then October 1st, Delegate Pina Melnick is a guest speaker at a fundraiser for me. And the guest speakers along with her are going to be the 3 Latina mayors of Prince George's who endorsed me. And so October 1st, 4 to 7.
And you have a website, Martin Mitchell?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. MartinforLaurel.com. And
MartinForLaurel.com.
Yes. MartinForL. Oh, okay. I got you. And then social media.
MartinForLaurel.com. Richard, before we get out of here, we want to commend you for covering these and other stories for the Black press. You are a phenomenal talent, and we can't wait for you to take over the realm here as the new editor of Be More News and BlackUSA.News. We just need to know your number.
Hey, we love it. We love it.
Did he just give me the West? I mean, flashing gang size. Kendrick Lamar. What was that? I don't know what that is.
Outstanding, Donnie. I am ready. After today, I'll have a very good article for you about the virtual option being voted down, the virtual attendance option being voted down. And I think that you can do some very good coverage just to hear what people's comments are, because this is one of the most hot button issues that has been in the county, because not just of how it affects the individual council member, not only because of how it shows how they feel about the individual council member, but because this is, like Joe said again, Joe, everything you said was on point. This is an attempt to disrupt the power structure.
So you're talking about, again, the first story we talked about, which was the Prince George's County Councilwoman who's pregnant, who's running into beef with Council Chair Hawkins, Wanika Fisher. I was really surprised to see Wanika Fisher in there. I was surprised to see a woman going after another woman, particularly if they shared Nigerian and or African descent. You know, I just figured Nigerian Americans would stick together. I mean, outside of Nigeria, I mean, granted, it's the largest African nation, 200 million people, and I know they have a multiplicity of different ethnic groups. However, you know, when we're away from home, we all, you know.
I'm not sure. Actually, let me put it this way. Wanika Fisher, Councilmember Wanika Fisher.
She's just getting there. She was in the House of Delegates.
Well,
she made this transition over. A lot of people say you make more money, and that was her reason for getting on the council, because it pays more money. I'm just saying that's what people have said to me.
No comment on that. However, both Joe and Martin can affirm what I'm about to say. Prior to the vote on virtual attendance, Councilmember Fisher had not attended a council meeting in 4 or 5 months. If you look at the council votes, almost all, you can go look at them, almost all of them say absent.
So why would she go after this pregnant black woman?
Councilmember Mitchell or Joe Gaskins, do either of you want to say it because I'm supposed to be objective?
So I mean, so
Yeah.
Richard is press. It's political. I mean, to be honest, right? Like when it came to rent stabilization, an issue that I was intimately involved with, it came down to very political. I think at the end, Juanica ended up voting for it, and Ingrid Harrison ended up voting for it. But like the coalition knew that they didn't want to vote for it in the first place, right? And so I think that it's just like what we see is the coalition standing together. You have the progressive people-centered, legislators, and then you have the more establishment ones. And that's just the, if we like it, we don't like it. That's just what it is. A lot of times you can see just from the donors who their interests are, right? So
See, what bothers me, you have the same game there in Prince George's that we have in Baltimore. You have these black people, they start off real nice. You meet them at church, they come up to you, shake your hand, hallelujah, thank you, Jesus. They might even go to the mosque. You might see them at a ball game, and you're like, oh, this guy, this girl, they're really cool. They are down with black people. Find out they went to Howard University, Morgan State University. But as you peel back the layers, as you watch their moves step by step, you realize, damn, this cat ain't no better than Donald Trump. This lady's no better than, I don't know, Donald Trump's wife. I mean, you wonder, Joe, that everybody your same skin ain't your kin.
Mm-hmm.
You're the elder.
Yeah, that's true. That's very, very true. So, and individuals who are not so political astute need to follow people who really, and it's difficult because they can't dissect who they are. When you put put black faces in the room,
you can't. You thought these people were your friend.
That's right. Absolutely.
You thought they were cool. You saw them. They're on Instagram.
Yeah.
They had the latest event.
Yes.
They said I'm black. I mean, because we've had at least one candidate from Prince George's County who made the mistake of saying, I'm not black. You saw what happened to them, but they got their act together and we forgave them, brought them back into the fold.
Mm-hmm. Ridiculous.
I digress. Gentlemen, this has been a very healthy discussion. Any final thoughts? You're laughing, Martin Mitchell. Any final thoughts before we get out of here?
My final thought is just my final thought is just be real to yourself, and the next time you see somebody running, don't ask them why they're running. Ask them what impact or change they made in the community that they want to represent. Because I promise you they can't bullshit that one.
Yeah, that's true. But also I want to remind everyone tomorrow to be at the county exec building in Largo at 10 o'clock so that we join this protest to voice our displeasure with what's happening to the pregnant county council person. 10 o'clock tomorrow morning.
I mean, that just sounds vicious, going after a pregnant black lady. That's just nothing pretty about that.
My last words, shout out to Kenneth Clark. Thank you for tuning in. I want to include your comments.
Who is Kenneth Clark? Would you tell us?
Yeah, Kenneth Clark, I went on his show. He's a minister. I went on his show in Prince George's, and his primary issue, the thing that he talks about and knows more about and does more to help with than arguably even the county director, is on homelessness. Kenneth gets people food. He gets stuff to the men's shelter. He takes care of folks. Kenneth is a great dude. Matter of fact, Kenneth, you need to ask me for some money soon.
I second that. I that's why I gave Kenneth a shout out. I second that.
Last words, Donnie, you're going to get some great writing on the virtual attendance, and for the remaining of the season, I want us to hold people to account for their records and accomplishments prior to their runs, so that we can have a good analysis of why we should support them.
Good deal. Any final thoughts, Joe?
I agree wholeheartedly.
Joe, you got these young lions coming up the back.
That's a good thing. Absolutely.
Y'all know Joe has been fighting. Joe was out there with Jesus. No, I'm just joking. Joe was out there with Harriet Tubman. No, my bad. No, but Joe's been out there fighting for a long time. And me too. I was out there with Harriet Tubman. But we need you, Martin. We need you, Richard Deshay, because me and Joe ready to go down on, get us a private island. Get ready to drinks. Sit back and drink pineapple juice all day.
We got you, man. We got
all
you.
For it.
Good deal. Gentlemen, thank you so much. Have a great morning. Good morning.
Have a great day.